That document is your godliness. And your godliness is like a flame. And therefore King Solomon said in the book of Proverbs, Ner Hashem, the candle of God, is nishmas adam, is the soul of man. That every human being who has a soul, you have to have a soul. If you have a soul, then you have an ability to express the most spiritual, the most godly, and good in the magnificent. So, anyways, as I was telling you, that's all, folks. Any questions? Do we have questions and answer a little bit? If you have any questions, if you have to go to the Daf Yomi, I wish you Godspeed and good mazel.
I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for coming, preparing.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you very much.
My pleasure. Okay. Any questions, please?
Yeah.
Yes, Aaron.
Well, it's a simple one, and I could elaborate the question. Any atheist will tell you there is no God. Why? Because there is no proof. On the other hand, there is so much evil in the world which God could maybe have to prevent it, and He didn't. He or she. So the question could be in two ways. One is, should the person abandon his need for proof? It's on one hand.
Good question.
And for the atheist, what would you tell the atheist?
Well, the first thing, let's talk about not the atheist to start with. The person who says, give me proof. First, define the parameters of what proof will be acceptable. Tell me, what will be the proof that will be acceptable? You have here an event that took place 3,300 plus years ago. The revelation at Sinai. You have people who are still committed and practicing this particular point in principle of this event. That means, and not only they're practicing it, but they're practicing it in a similar manner the way it was practiced 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, 1,000, 100 years ago. That means a mezuzah, for example. Anytime a Jew puts a mezuzah on his doorpost, he is practicing a mitzvah. You have mezuzahs today, and the mezuzah today, and if you go into the writing of the Code of Jewish Law of Yosef Cairo, 500 years ago, if you go into the writings of the Rambam, 850 years ago, and you go into the writing of Rav Saadia Gaon 1,000 years ago, and you go into the writing of the Amoraim 1,500 years ago, you will find there's a consistency. Not only there's a consistency, they even have the same discussion 2,000 years ago. How are you supposed to affix the mezuzah to your door? Is it supposed to be straight? Is it supposed to be flat? Or is it supposed to be ma'arachsen? And therefore they have the position the same way we affix the mezuzah. Now this isn't one isolated incident. You have a group that says we don't represent only our group. We represent mankind. We also represent that mankind has a diversity. That everybody doesn't have to be a party card-carrying member of our group. But that there is one creator. And remember, there are many people who believe in one creator. As a matter of fact, there are billions. Thanks to our cousins, the Muslims. But you're talking about there's certain points that we have and continues to have throughout the history that still exist to this very day. There's never been a break in the chain. And the linkage is there. And we can trace from the biblical, whether you accept the Bible's view, whether you're a believer in the Bible's view of creation, or the longevity, or the flood, or any of the episodes that we are told, you still have a lineage, you have a chain. So your only way of refuting that chain, that means you can still trace your history back. If you have genealogical tools, you could trace your way back all the way to Abraham. And even if a person converted to Judaism, they could trace their roots, if they could go back, they would trace their roots back to the Jewish root. Because there was a very famous rabbi. He was either the Chadushi Arim, one of the Rebbes from Gur, that he said anyone who converts to Judaism and embraces Torah and mitzvahs in a genuine manner, that they want to be part of the Jewish people and they want to observe the practices that God has told the Jewish people He wants them to do, that person, if you check their roots, there was a Jew someplace or Jews in their roots, and somehow they became mixed amongst and lost amongst, for whatever reason, through persecution or through whatever the reason. And therefore they came out to convert in 1997, in 1982, in 1846, in 2010. That means that there was something there, and he proves this, he said, because in the Talmud, and I've said this many times, it doesn't call a convert a goy shenisgayer, a Gentile who converts. It calls a convert a ger shenisgayer. That means there's some type of a status of being a ger even before you convert. So the point I'm trying to say is like this. There are certain people that will look at sunrise and sunset and say, wow, there's a God in the world. And there's certain people that say, look at that shmendrik, that bum that lives over there, what he just did, and he just got out of jail and he's going to do it again. Is there a God in the world? Certain people will look at the fact that they survived the hand of God. Certain people will say, is there a God in the world? All that thing can happen? So, human beings are complex, and human beings it's very hard to really put yourself in somebody else's shoe and be judgmental on the person. And say, he's bad, an atheist chooses to be an atheist. It's a belief in atheist. You have to be a believer to be an atheist. It's not, you can't say, I don't believe. If you believe, if you're not an atheist, but you say, look, I believe in some creator, like Einstein said or Spinoza said, they believe in a creator, they just don't believe that this creator really interacts or gives a hoot what's going on over here now. And in Jewish scholarship and philosophy, it speaks about this. It says, they accept that there was a Borei Olam, they accept there was a creator, but Bora the Ozav Esa Olam. He created and he abandoned the earth. And then he says, okay, men and women, you're on your own. Make a case for it. One can make a case for anything. One can make a case for anything. But the bottom line is, everything that people say, agnostic, for example, says, I don't know. The atheist is a hardcore committed person. I remember last year in California, because I'm just new to Adam. I just came in September of 2012, and I was here for 31 years before 2008. There was a tremendous tumult. And this is only idiotic California can do this. It's not the whole California. But there was a certain place, a certain area, Santa Monica it's called. And they had a tremendous park there called Santa Monica Park. And the Santa Monica Park, every year, before the holiday seasons, let's face it, America is predominantly a Christian country, as Canada is predominantly a Christian country. Maybe it'll soon be a Muslim country, but right now it's still a Christian country. So they have these tremendous billboards and displays, and they would give it to different Christian, some evangelical, the different denominations of Christianity, and they would give them these areas, and they would make these beautiful scenes, the scenes of the nativity and scenes of this and so on and so on. Anyways, of Tzalachis, the Atheists Association of California, they went to the Board of Regents of the council people of Santa Monica, which is, Los Angeles is gigantic, and this is one little area, and they said, we demand equal. So in their astute wisdom, they said every group will be able to have as many these things as these areas to decorate with their ethos and their beliefs as they wish, and we're going to choose by goyrel, by a lottery. So, for example, for the Protestants, they put in a certain amount, and they put in a certain amount for the atheists, and the Yetzer Hara and the Satan, when you give a chance, so from 15 sites, 9 of them were won by the atheists. And there was an outrage. And the radio talk shows were going crazy. Was the people nuts or something? So there's one Orthodox Shomer Shabbos radio host. His name is Michael Medved. He's about Tshuva. He's very popular, and he's probably the brightest. He's of course right wing, but right wing with heart, and right wing with a little bit of common sense too.
He had one thing on this.
What's
He
that?
voted for Obama.
Michael Medved didn't vote
The
for
first
us.
time.
He did? That's what, oh, you heard him? You heard? I don't know that. Anyways, whoever he voted for, so he would invite the president of the Atheist Society to come on the radio, and he was asking us, he says, could you please explain to me, what exactly bothers you that other people are having pleasure from the Christmas holiday season? What bothers you? He says, because they're trying to impose their, he says, what are you talking about? And he would like really chop him up, and it would be open phone line, and they would bombard him. And what was the names? The presidents was named Rosenfeld, and the vice presidents was named Goldberg. And so, in the civil liberties, an enormous propensity of Jews, an enormous proportion of Jews would be part of this Mishigas. That one decides he wants to be or she wants to be an atheist, that's your prerogative. But when you have to impose, when it bothers you, and it bothers them, by the way, a Hanukkah menorah, public menorahs also. It bothers them. You're fostering this type of coercion, and you know. So this is a religion. Let's understand. Atheism is a dogma by many of them. And it requires a belief. And even the person says, look, I believe, I'm not a creationist, I believe in the theory of relativity, and even though there's all kinds of scientific fact, I believe in random this, and I believe in selective this, and so on and so forth. I really didn't want to discuss that. I don't want to go into this now, because this is a lengthy discussion. But it's a belief. You believe in this. You believe. You say, what do you mean there's carbon dating, and there's this, and then that, and what could it be off? Only a few million, 10 million, 20 million years old. I mean, you have to be committed to this. There's a commitment that is required. So, when you're talking about a person, if a person was not instructed, if a person did not have experiences in religion, in Jewish religion, in Yiddishkeit, in the beauty of a Shabbat, the beauty of a Chag, the beauty of a festival, in the commitment of the mitzvahs, whether it be the mitzvah of mikveh, taras hamishpacha, whether it be the mitzvah of tefillin, a person that it looks like from the moon. And that's why these people are not called sinners, they're called, person is called a tinik shenishpa, like a child that was brought up in a non-Jewish environment. Because if his parents adopted him and they were non-Jews, and they brought him up in such a manner. After the Holocaust, there were many stories of Jewish orphans whose parents gave them away to Christians and Catholics, in Poland in particular, and they were brought up really as Catholics, and one of them became the Archbishop of Paris, Lustiger. And he was one of the candidates once upon a time to be the Pope. He could have been chosen Pope. And he spoke a perfect Yiddish. Because he still remembered the Yiddish of his home. And he actually once traveled to Israel to visit his cousins. His cousins wanted to have nothing to do with him. The cousins that did manage to, his parents didn't survive him. His parents didn't survive him. But his cousins didn't survive the war. He came to Israel. And, you know, he spoke, and he made a point to study Hebrew and this, and so on and so forth. So once there was a Chabad rabbi, a very, very fine man, he's not alive anymore. His name was Rabbi Hillel Pesner from Paris. He had a school of 1,500 girls, a girls' school, a very, very fine school in Paris. And he was once at a community, a government event where he was there, the Archbishop was there. And he walked by the Archbishop and he said, Herschel, bist noch als a Yid. Still a Jew. Kennst noch als Tshuvaton. And he said this. So, you know, the complexity of life is one of the messianic promises, and we say it in our prayers on the high holidays, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it says, U'bo'u ha'oivdim me'eretz Ashur, v'anidochim me'eretz Mitzrayim, the Ovdim, the lost Jews, from Assyria, meaning it'll go back thousands of years. People who think they are not Jewish or don't know they are Jewish will be brought back. Not because they're going to be in a higher, better level, it's better to be a Jew. Not that it's better to be a Jew, but if it's part of your spiritual identity, then you have a spiritual potential that can be expressed and can be developed. And if you don't develop it, then unfortunately you're being wasted. It would be tantamount. There's a famous metaphor that Rabbi Schneerson, blessed memory, the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, that everything that exists in the world, and the world is divided not only in general scientific terms, but in chakira, in the philosophical and the inquiring dimension of Torah study, the world is divided into 4 different categories. One is called inanimate objects. In Hebrew it's called doimen. Another is called someach, someach is vegetation. Third is called chai, animals. And the fourth is called medaber, the human. And the interpretation was that each one starts with inanimate. For it to be productive, it has to connect itself to a higher form of life. It has to express a higher form. So that means when you have a field that's just a desert, and there can be no vegetation growing there, you call it desolate. You call it a wasteland. And if vegetation can grow there, then you call it productive. What Israel has done to many of its lands, with its hydroponics and ways of watering and etc., that is like the envy of the world. Then you take the vegetation, the growth, the plant kingdom. Plants have a greater form of life. They grow, they need to be cut, they need to be watered, they need to have sunshine. But plants, for them to be called productive, they have to connect to either animals have to be able to graze on them, humans have to be able to look at them, there has to be some type of, or eat from them. I mean, if it remains just grass that is unusable by any other species of a higher form of life, in the sense that there's more recognition that it's alive, then it's also called like wild grass. And then you take animals, and you follow this till you come to humans. And humans, notwithstanding vegans and vegetarians, humans, however, they have to connect also to a higher form of life. And what is their higher form of life? That is elokus. That for a human being to remain purely human, and his life is committed only to pursuing human pursuits, even if they're intellectual pursuits, but he doesn't connect to the spirit, doesn't connect to something spiritual, then he or she falls into the same category as a piece of desert that nothing can blossom there. Blossoming is connecting to something that is higher. So this is, I guess, part of the challenge. And Emunah is something, I want to make one little footnote over here to the previous footnotes. You don't have to have Emunah Shlema to be able to do the mitzvahs of the Torah, to be able to do it. At the end of the day, and this is not to be taken literally, but it's to be taken as an understanding that Judaism is not merely a religion of faith. The whole religion is not expressed in faith. It's expressed in faith, it's expressed in talk, it's expressed in eating, it's expressed in drinking, it's expressed in learning, it's expressed how you act at work, it's expressed in many, many different manners. It's different than any other religion. There's no religion in planet Earth today that by eating a hamburger or a hot dog, you're doing something that is a spiritual experience. You like hamburgers, you like hot dogs, you like with mustard, you like with relish, you make sure it's kosher. That means you disqualify a lot by that, and you make a blessing before. You have to make a blessing after.